I'm curious what you talked for a second on like the dieting aspect, which I'm really curious to talk about that a little bit too, because I know a lot of people, that's like something I've really become aware of in myself and people around me. And I think it's really tricky because there is like, you know, this desire to want to be healthy, and it can look like taking care of my body, like doing what I want for my body. So what is that, like, how do we navigate that line between having a desire to, you know, like eat well and take care, because you studied nutrition too. So I'm curious what you think as far as that, like body image and dieting, and how we can navigate that, particularly as women, but I know men go through it too.
Yeah. I think that, well, that's one of the things that is funny to me when I look back on why I wasn't a good health coach, but I'm great at the type of coaching I do now, is because I had had too many years of my own experience with various different forms of disordered eating to feel comfortable coming into a space where I would be coaching someone into just finding a new blueprint or another avenue of control. And what I don't mean is I wasn't trained in that necessarily in the program I went through. But I do think there are still lots of pieces of the prevailing narrative of diet culture and ableism, even in, and sometimes especially in, more holistic and integrative spaces, because there's this like false equivalency between how you choose to eat and how you choose to move with like your overall morality as a person. And even the terminology of like the fact that we have a terminology like clean eating is really upsetting and problematic and can be kind of dangerous actually. So so my own personal experience of having just constantly just trying to find a new rule, and then when that rule didn't work, give me another rule, and that rule didn't work. And then my body again, I had a lot of health issues, which did kind of force me to have to get curious about if I had any allergies or any intolerances. So that at least got me curious enough to start listening to and experiencing symptoms as information. Or if I eat something, and because I'm trying to identify an allergy or intolerance, so if I eat something, then I get to notice what happens. And it was that noticing rather than just being given some rules, like you're supposed to be vegan, you're supposed to be paleo, like give the invitation to notice how my unique body interacted with and reacted to eating certain things allowed me to begin to do what I didn't know at the time was called intuitive eating, and to develop a relationship to eating intuitively for the first time in my life. And so there's definitely a lot of people who, and even in specific like intuitive eating coaches who, you know, if you Google, you can find them, and they know way more about that than I do. But my own personal experience with shifting from a diet culture based rule-oriented paradigm that measured my morality by the way in which I ate and the foods I ate and how much I ate, into, wait a minute, let me listen to my body. Let me experience cravings as information, not something to avoid or to, you know, move away from, which I think is something we're trained into as women too. It's like, if you want it, don't have it, which is the layers of dysfunction involved in even that idea and like what we're doing to ourselves. And we agree with that. But learning how to pay attention to what my body apparently had to say to me about how she felt and how I felt when I ate certain things as opposed to other things. And I think what's so beautiful about that is I can find what works for me and someone else is going to find what works for them. And so it inherently, if you are moving in the direction of eating intuitively, it becomes unfundamentalist. And it becomes something where you don't get to say there's one right way. Just like there's not one right way to be a human person, there's also not one right way to feed yourself as a human person. Everybody has to, I don't say has to, but I feel like the invitation is there for us, hopefully, to be with ourselves, learn what our specific bodies are telling us that they most need to function well. But I do think that diet culture and capitalism married with one another make that really difficult to do.
Yeah, well, and you can see in that the fact that there's so much different information about how you should eat in this diet or that diet, and they're like seem so opposite and like completely like counter to each other. And so that to me just shows like everybody's bodies are different. What
Yeah.
works for one person might not work for you.
Yep.
So to follow like a set of rules and know this is what's like I need to do, and usually those are crafted for a specific external result,
Right.
like having your body
Right.
look a certain way or burning a certain
Yes.
amount of fat, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy.
Right.
Just because you
1000%.
look like a certain way.
Yes.
So.
And that's it. And that's also like a dangerous assumption, right? Like
Mhm.
assuming that size or shape of a body has any accurate measure of health or wellness
Mhm.
at all is just blatantly inaccurate.
Yeah.
And it's honestly dangerous because I've heard everything in the people, you know, in the experiences of the people I've worked with. And I've heard both ends of the spectrum, which is that my clients who have larger bodies, who have physical illnesses, chronic illness, whatever it might be, an imbalance of some kind, they go to their doctor and literally all they're told is lose weight.
Mhm.
They're not taken seriously.
Yeah.
I've even had clients who were told you don't have this specific health issue that you think you have. You actually just need to lose weight.
Mhm.
That's extremely dangerous. And then I've also heard from clients who have health issues and have chronic illness or some kind of imbalance going on in their body.
Yeah.
They want to take care of themselves. They go to the doctor and they present as classically thin. And
Yeah.
they're literally told by their doctors, you can't be sick, you're thin. You're
Mhm.
clearly not sick. You don't have this health issue. So I'm like, either end of the spectrum, and that's the whole thing. It's a trap. Like apparently there's no right way to be in a body and be
Mhm.
taken seriously. And again, I don't want to mischaracterize all doctors because that's
Yeah.
not the case. And I've had some that have been powerful and honestly life-saving in some ways.
Mhm.
But I think it's the doctors that have divorced themselves from that false assumption who have been really helpful.
Yeah.
And the doctors who unfortunately have not divorced themselves from that false assumption and are maybe still believing the bullshit that is the BMI, that they're
Mhm.
thinking like size and shape of a human body is the full measure or the most important measure of health, and it's not.
Yeah. Dang. And that even ties back into the same thing of like expectations, outside pressures, look a certain
Mhm.
way, be a certain way, act a way. Like
Yes.
it's funny how things all
Yep.
tend to like, once you find that thing, it's like everything in my life is like connected to this
Yep.
thing.
And it is a trap
Yeah.
because you might, by some metrics of some of those objectifying systems, might be like nailing it.
Mhm.
And then the next day, they're going to move the goalpost and then you're not
Mhm.
doing it right again.
Yeah.
So
It's
these objectifying
changing too
systems are
fast.
trying to make you think that even their measures are objective when
Mhm.
really they're incredibly subjective, and that's on purpose because
Yeah.
they wanted, there's a lot of reasons for that. But if you're stuck in like a shame cycle, you're
Mhm.
going to be, again, diet culture tells on itself because if you're not eating intuitively, it can continue to sell you a new book or a new
Mhm.
diet or a new thing that they want to make money off of.
Yeah.
So to step outside of that system, you're stepping outside of patriarchy and white supremacy because it's white supremacist beauty standards that say like thinness
Yeah.
and whiteness is correct. And you're stepping outside of capitalism and you're stepping outside of ableism. And we could go down this rabbit hole. We don't have time. We don't have to. But the religion of my childhood, white evangelical Christianity, was
Yeah.
super obsessed with thinness as a measure of holiness as well.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of people, again, who know more about this than I do, who've had this experience where they talk about how their disordered eating was encouraged
yeah.
by that conversation around thinness equals
Well, even
holiness.
fasting culture can
Yes,
get really like into,
Again, I've heard it from
like
so many of my clients.
resisting
Resist
like,
desires.
your desire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's all caught up in there for
Yes.
sure.